Welcome to the Leadership Passport, the podcast where we dive into the journeys, challenges, and insights of school and education leaders from around the world. And I'm delighted to introduce my guest today, Alex Bell. Alex is an award-winning executive coach and designer of coaching programs in socially responsible leadership at local, national, and international levels, working for major education, nonprofit, and commercial organizations. He's an international facilitator, conference moderator, and changemaker, known for his bold, socially responsible innovation in education and beyond. He's the co-creator of Yes Fest and a facilitator at the Eden Project's Changemakers program. Alex has co-founded initiatives like Leadership Lemonade and xtalks.org and produced the documentary School is Yesterday, This is School. He also serves as an international judge for the Diana Award and was named 100 Global Ambassador of the Year in 2020. Welcome, Alex.
Thanks very much, Kevin. Great to have me. Great to be here.
Yeah, great to be great great for you to be here. I think that's what I'm trying to say. So
I was just stunned by that introduction. It's always embarrassing when you've got to hear all that list of stuff you've done.
it is.
It
It's
really
always
is.
a bit of an awkward moment, but yeah. So what might be one surprising thing about you that not many other people might know?
Oh, you've heard me talk about this before. I want to dance with Rihanna. I did a gig when I first went freelance about 10, 11 years ago for the Barbados government. It didn't pay very much, but it gave me a great story, and I've dined out on that story. It was the Barbados' 50th anniversary of independence. I was invited to do this education Olympiad around that, and had a wonderful time doing really great projects. And my kind of like prize at the end was to be invited to the Prime Minister's quite select party, and Rihanna was there, and I danced in her vicinity. Let's say I didn't. She's got no idea who I am. She's, I'm sure she's not dining out on that story at all, but I certainly am.
Amazing. I love it. So, if your leadership style were a song or a movie, what would it be and why?
Absolutely, Field of Dreams. If you know the Kevin Costner film with the strapline, "If you build it, they will come." I think around the world there are a number of abandoned baseball pitches, a number of baseball pitches I've kind of started. The premise of the film is basically you don't have to have permission to make a mad idea happen, a folly happen, and often those kind of maddest, most folly kind of ideas are the ones that perhaps can lead to something amazing. So I've had a few kind of noble attempts and a few successes, and I think it's about just having that confidence to have people around you that say, yeah, let's just make it happen. So yeah, Field of Dreams is the one that I would say sums up what I do and what I care about.
Fantastic. So, we talk a little bit about your leadership journey. What inspired you to become involved in education and leading these kinds of amazing programs that you do?
Oh, that's very kind. So I live in London now, right in the heart of one of the world's kind of most exciting cities. But my grandparents were from London. I don't live too far from where they were based. But then after the Second World War, they moved. They moved out of London because of smog, a combination of smoke and fog. So the pollution. My grandfather had emphysema, and they moved to Cornwall. So my mum met my dad in Cornwall. He was a merchant sailor, and so I grew up on a beach, kind of in the middle of nowhere, because I'm pretty old these days, and so no internet, no mobile phones. If your friends kind of wanted to get in touch with you, they'd have to kind of ring the landline and ask to speak to you. And I wasn't really kind of that mobile at all until I had a pushback about the age of sort of 10, I think. So I would spend a lot of my time kind of daydreaming on this beach. So Cornwall is the very far southwest peninsula of England. And back then, it was literally the middle of nowhere as far as I was concerned. So I did an awful lot of daydreaming. But the one quirk about where anybody lives is that where I was, it was the world's busiest port, commercial port of its size. It was tiny, absolutely tiny, but it had many, many tankers and ships coming back and forth every day with kaolin. Kaolin was the big export there. It's China clay. They make cosmetics, porcelain, that kind of stuff, paint from it. And so it's really tiny but busy. So I'd be this kid on the beach, kind of daydreaming quite a lot. Just my siblings are much older than me, and I just, those kind of things that you ponder on when you're a kid, but as an adult, you don't really give enough time to kind of ponder. These ships were coming from all over the world, and I just started to kind of imagine these other lives, other people, other places. And the one kind of moment that really sums all that up for me is New Year's Eve. Big thing. My mum met my dad on New Year's Eve. Our house, the Scottish word for New Year's Eve is Hogmanay, so all our houses as a kid were called Hogmanay to commemorate that occasion. On New Year's Eve, every year, whatever the time zone was for any of those ships, they closed the port for a couple of days for the Christmas period. Those ships would be out on the horizon with this little kid, me, looking at them, and they would honk their horns to celebrate midnight wherever they were in the world. And it absolutely kind of fascinated me, this idea of other lives, other time zones, other things going on there. And so I was very much kind of connected to where I was in a sort of sense of time and place, but I was really also connected to the sort of the near future and the possibilities in other lives. And I've kind of followed that kind of curiosity about, oh, what's going on somewhere else ever since, with the advent of sort of mass communications and the internet. That little boy kind of standing on the beach wondering about other lives has just driven everything I do, I think.
Yeah, amazing. So, thinking about your work across cultures and around the world, what's been your biggest aha moment working cross culturally?
I think it is that connection. Um, we may get into it later on, but one of the things that happened in lockdown is all our lives were kind of most of our lives were really, really disrupted. A terrible thing to happen, but I think also some quite wonderful little sparks of possibilities where there were no rules, there were no kind of guidebooks to what to do, so we kind of made things up. And so, with some friends from 100, as you mentioned, 100, who have been a wonderful family, global family for me. They're based in Helsinki, Finland, and have really kind of been a catalyst for lots of the ideas I've had and others I've been inspired by. With friends from 100, we created something called Link Online Learners, and it was basically like this, online conversations and the kind of ordinariness of your everyday life. So I'm in London now, and it's just past 9 o'clock in the morning. You're in Kuwait, people are sort of listening to this and watching this in other parts of the world. We will all have something which we're doing, the routine activities we're doing, that they are fascinating if you're in another part of the world. So I started before that with something called X Talks, which you mentioned, which was in Malawi, and that was kids just sharing their everyday lives. But of course, if you're not from Malawi and don't know very much about it, it's absolutely riveting to know what's going on there. So I think there's something really fascinating about what's going on there. What did you have? With Link Online Learners, we'd sort of say, like, show us out of your window. And we'd say, what's going on there? In Kenya, it would be chickens in the backyard. In London, it would be the kind of London buses and all that kind of stuff there. And just that kind of joining up the dots in a really tangible way kind of underpins perspectives. And I think I'm really worried now that there are kind of algorithms and news feeds that just silo people's perspectives and kind of concentrate the good and the bad in who we are. And I think it's that plurality and that kind of diversity of thinking that really is very important for the child in all of us, and particularly the kind of the literal children of who are sort of learning about the world to know what it looks like, feels like, and sounds like on a very regular basis, because it then just challenges assumptions. It flattens some of those hierarchies and changes decisions as you go through your life.
Yeah, and that's a really interesting perspective because we tend to, when we talk about with little kids, let's say in preschool or kindergarten, a sense of, fostering a sense of wonder and awe and curiosity about the world, and then it kind of you move into elementary and middle and high school, something kind of happens to it, and that's it. It's a really interesting story that you shared, just in those kind of mundane things. What do you have for breakfast? What's your morning routine like? Like,
Yeah,
what
I
do
mean,
you?
Ken Robinson talks about the difference between learning, which we're all hardwired for, education and school. There's a massive difference between those three experiences. As young children, as adults, I think it's really important that true natural, organic learning is the heart of what we do. I think sometimes it's kind of dressed up as something far more unpalatable and difficult and uh, not attractive. And I think actually, true awe and wonder learning is just awesome.
Yeah.
Truly awesome.
Yeah. So you talked earlier about, having that sort of that sense of wonder and awe and curiosity as a child, looking out to the port and the ocean. I wonder, as you moved into education and leadership and leading some of these programs and initiatives around the place, has there been a similarly defining moment for you in that space?
Um, Several. I mean, I think we are always influenced by the people we surround ourselves with, and there's been sort of not great periods there where I've kind of been, sucked into systems which are about um, the protocols and the systems and the control rather than actual humanity there. And I think that's, I'm sure many people have a similar reference point. But the kind of the high points have been when it's been about that real connection. Families in difficulties, families celebrating key moments in their lives. The shared humanity of being a parent. I was a school leader at the same time as being a parent of young children. In my communities, that was very, very interesting to kind of first of all be on the outside, then kind of be on the inside, and try and sort of balance those two there, where it at its best didn't feel any different, and it's at its worst. I didn't always manage to get that right. I think the defining moment of remembering that all of us at heart are, children and humans, no matter what the title or the accolades or that long list of things I've done in the past or whatever. Actually, we're just kind of working things out, and it's relationships. It's not transactions. It's not curriculum content. It is, at the end of the day, the difference you've made in the conversations you've had and the listening you've done.
Mm. So if we sort of talk a little bit now about some of the harsher realities of leadership and some of the difficulties, what's one of the toughest leadership challenges you've faced, and how did you navigate it?
Two things: ego. I'm a pale, stale guy, and I've sort of thought that for a long time. I'm probably leaning into it more, these days. And I think also sometimes inauthenticity. You sometimes can be part of a bigger organization or a bigger kind of jurisdiction, and kind of forget who you are and why you are and all that stuff there. And I think that's been quite difficult, where you make a decision, it's not really you, and then do you have the guts to say, I got that wrong? And I think now I can probably do it, but there have been times when I haven't. And that's been, through lack of courage or just circumstance making it very difficult to do that. So I think, yes, surround yourself by good people, be as authentic as possible. That's not always possible. So forgive yourself when you haven't got it right. And I'm thinking of myself all the time now. I used to really beat myself up about mistakes, but I think, like, we're all doing it. And if you're not making mistakes, you're not learning. If it's all easy and perfect, then you're getting it wrong.
Yeah, is there one particular mistake that stands out to you as a particular learning experience for you?
Yeah, but I think when I was, when I was a school leader in my own community, and I was making decisions that were right for me and for the jurisdiction rather than the whole community. You know, that's probably the toughest one. And it wasn't one particular big thing, like a big tabloid kind of headline. It was just those daily numerous decisions where that was the perspective I had. I'd kind of stuck in the perspective of protecting the system as opposed to really having the wider understanding of a whole community that's been there before me in that role and has continued to be there. Luckily, I'm still friends with many of those people since I've moved on for that job. But I think that was kind of where I didn't get it right.
Right. You talked about, times there where you have to kind of be true to yourself and be authentic in terms of, your ethics and what you believe to be true and right, and make tough decisions. How do you handle that kind of tough decision making that, sometimes maybe unpopular or misunderstood, or Yeah. How do you navigate that?
Um, Find a buddy, find a like-minded person that kind of that gets the biggest picture. Often, it's somebody not in education. I love the wisdom of people who aren't, in the system and school leaders. And there's sometimes somebody who's got not a clue about the specifics and the semantics about the difficult thing you're going through, but they just get life and they get people. And I think that's sometimes, and it could be sort of an elder in your community, or with me, it's sort of like, I've got a sort of wise elders in my family. And I love that kind of just, you don't have to give them any detail about the specifics because they wouldn't really understand. You just have to give them the overarching kind of issue there. So I think, yeah, stepping back and not getting sucked into the real specifics of stuff there, because you can get lost. You can really get
Mm.
lost.
Yeah. Oh, I think that's great advice. What's a leadership practice or a habit that's changed the game for you?
It took me a while to cotton on to it, but that kind of absolute honorable kindness and impeccable kind of respect for others. Not that I disrespected people, but I think sometimes, I didn't give them total regard. So even people who present as, having very different choices and perspectives to you, I now know that honoring them with ultimate kindness and respect will bring their truth to you in a way that perhaps in the past I would have just and I think often there's a lot of wisdom in a difference of opinion. So there are people who share very different kind of political perspectives to me now, but just by listening and being curious, which I think underpins all that I do, you get to hear their stories. So even if you still fundamentally disagree with the choices they've made and the kind of the line of thinking they've got, you have an empathy and an understanding there. And I think sometimes just allowing that to come out through impeccable respect and kindness will give you that commonality, and it stops that kind of like tribalism and all the polarization that I think is endemic at the moment.
Okay, so if we cast our minds to the future now, how do you see international education or leadership evolving over the next decade?
Possibilities, at least within many possibilities, but two that I worry about. One is kind of one which is where there are many powerful people, and it kind of gets centralized into kind of like like we've seen with sort of commerce and politics and so on and so forth. It could go that way, where it's about the system and kind of people being sucked into that. Or the other, which is the one I work very hard to kind of to create and to protect and to kind of foster, is this idea of kind of people powered rather than powerful people, where we have a say, we are listened to, we shape this. And I think sometimes young children, young people, little children are the least listened to, actually. There's a kind of like a surface level to that, but actually in terms of decisions about what's offered to them and what they are able to shape for themselves, that's what I wish for. So I think um, I worry at the moment. There's, commercially, there's kind of a lot of, sort of drawbridge drawing up and, sort of separation. I think, we are on one planet, and a lot of work I want to do is that connection, between us and nature and us as human beings. So that's what I hope for, is that we actually are more connected and more understanding than ever, because we have all these mechanisms to understand at a really kind of microscopic level what somebody's going through. Citizen reportage and live links to all parts of the world there. That should elevate what we're doing to really understanding what's going on. Of course, then there's get handed all over to AI and just to sit back and try and work out our purpose. But I think AI is there to serve us, not the other way around. And I think we need to really make sure the humanity and the connection is what the purpose of international education is.
Yeah, and I think there'd be so many people around the place that would share your, sentiments and aspirations for the future based around that. And I think for in any schools or school systems that I've seen that are really flourishing and doing amazing things, it's where they've really focused on student agency and co-creation and put more
Yeah.
control back into the hands of kids, because we have a tendency as adults to make assumptions about what kids want or what we think might be best for them, rather than just asking them and drawing them into the process of what their education looks like.
And Kevin, like so far we've done some pretty good things, but us grown-ups have also done some pretty terrible things. So we haven't got it right, and we are the least expert in what the future looks like. And we won't be witnessing it, unless by some miracle we live, a very long time. So I think just from a kind of human rights perspective and a sense of social justice, it has to be that we genuinely listen to and act upon the feelings, thoughts, and ideas of our youngest people in whatever way is appropriate.
Yeah. So, what's one piece of advice you'd give to an aspiring school or education leader?
Um, I would say don't be siloed. Just if you're a school leader, get out of the office, get in amongst it, get in your community, get in the classrooms, and just feel how it is to be a community member, to be a young person. So whatever it takes to just be in amongst it, so firsthand. You're listening to your families, to your young people, to your educators, but also you're just watching and feeling it firsthand. There's nothing that kind of it is the richest data. It's not about the charts, it's about the ears and eyes on the ground of what it feels like. I used to, when I was a school teacher, I used to go to my barber and say, "How am I doing?" He said, "What do you mean, how am I doing?" I said, "Like, tell me what's filtering down to you about the decisions I'm making as a school leader and about the actions that are tangible, the sort of beacon actions, as my friend David Price used to call it, the stuff that's being noticed." And he would go, and he'd tell me something. I go, "Oh, that's how it's landed with the community and what the community are telling you." And it was a really useful piece of kind of feedback. All the policies and the meetings and the whatever I was doing. What's the word on the street about those things?
Yeah, amazing, amazing. So, a couple of quick questions to wrap things up now. Your
Oh,
favorite book on life or leadership?
why? See it? Yeah, is it there?
Yep. Yep.
Start with why. I think Simon Sinek just kind of cotton onto something where I think as a kid, I always used to be asking why. As an executive coach, there's kind of the five whys. You keep on asking why until you get to the heart of the problem. I think as an educator, as a teacher, I would always, always, always make sure my kids knew why they were doing something rather than just, do as I say kind of stuff there. And I think it's a really important underpinning fundamental question that whatever our actions are and decisions are, we know why we're doing it. And if we don't, and if we're questioned by a kid, by a team member, by a member of our community, and we haven't got a pretty compelling reason why we're doing it, maybe we shouldn't be doing it. Yeah, so that's amazing. Kind of all the stuff that came out of that book, the conversations afterwards.
Yeah, fantastic. One thing you do daily that helps you to lead better?
Um, I keep in touch with a really, really diverse mix of people on a really regular basis. WhatsApp and conversations like this, kind of mates who I'm, in Maasai tribes in Kenya, to all parts of the world there. I just love that kind of ticker tape of what's going on in the world around me, because I think sometimes you just get it from a news feed or from certain kind of algorithms. It's not the same thing. And sometimes I just have to switch off that news and I say, we are the news, what's going on in your world. And I think that when there are times of despair at a kind of international, news feed level, the hope and the kind of the courage to move forward I get is from just asking people how they're doing, and they tell me, what's going on.
Great. And then maybe sometimes you just have to switch all that off, go out to your shed and have a dance to Rihanna, perhaps.
Um, what I do in my private life, I'm not prepared to share, Kevin, but you might not be wrong there.
A leader, past or present, you admire?
Oh, my dear recently departed friend, David Price. He was a great friend of Sir Ken Robinson. I was a huge fan of both. I'm privileged to say that David, for a period, was a very good friend, and we would speak on 5 times a day basis. And I think that period in my kind of own growth and humanity, I will treasure forever. And I'm now I feel a certain responsibility to take forward some of the ideas which sadly he was cut short. And so I think it's incumbent upon me and many others to take some of his absolute wisdom and humanity forward.
Mm. And finally, best advice you've ever received?
Show up, literally, metaphorically, emotionally. Just be in the room with the people who are there.
Fantastic. Well, that sounds like a wonderful piece of advice to wrap things up on. So thanks so much for your time today, Alex. I really appreciate it. And it's been wonderful to
Thank you,
chat
Kevin.
with
It's
you.
been a pleasure.
Yeah. Thank you. Take care. Thanks so much for listening to the episode. If you enjoyed this conversation, don't forget to subscribe, like, follow, etc. Drop a comment below to let me know anything you'd like covered in upcoming episodes or suggestions for future guests. You can also connect with me on Instagram and LinkedIn.